Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 10, Episode 113. He's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being here this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy Friday. Here we are. What's this? The last Friday of the month of May now. Getting into June. Normally we would be we'd be right in the heart of the I guess the first or second OTAs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now I know the Goodell has extended virtual offseason into June, I think 2 weeks into June or so. But not a whole lot going on right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, thankfully the Steelers have kind of helped us along. They and Mike Tomlin too. I think we started or over the weekend we had Mike Tomlin talking. Well, I guess even going back to last Saturday, we had Minkah and Cameron Hayward on the CBS Sports HQ show there. That provided us a little something. And then I think if you get into Monday on Memorial Day there, we had Mike Tomlin on the John Calipari show. Got a couple things to talk about there. And then this past week we had both Minkah Fitzpatrick and Diontae Johnson give virtual Zoom interviews there. So at least we've had a little something there to keep us busy, keep discussion flowing.
Yeah, credit to the Steelers for making those guys accessible during this time of year, and credit to those guys, Minkah and Diontae Johnson, all the others that have given their time and been available for media interviews. And let's start with what Diontae Johnson said, because he definitely had a lot to say in his Zoom call with the local media. I thought the most notable thing that he said were his own personal goals. He said, quote, "My goal is to have at least 1,000 yards and the Pro Bowl. I also want to be an all-pro punt returner." So this guy has his sights pretty high, and rightfully so, for 2020.
Yeah, and that's kind of the first, I think, official time or first kind of thing out of somebody's mouth that we heard that he might indeed be the full-time punt returner. This upcoming season. Obviously we've been kind of speculating, probably either him or Ryan Switzer along those lines. And obviously if you go back to last season, Ryan Switzer started the year obviously as the punt returner, got about 10 games into it, suffered that back injury. Was that against the Rams? Was it against the Rams?
I do not remember.
It feels like it was. And then obviously he was sidelined, then placed on IR. And up until that point, I think Diontae had one punt return, and then he ended the season, I think, with 20, and then obviously one of those, a long one to return for a touchdown, I think, against the Cardinals there, and then he parlayed that into, remember, he was, second team All-Pro return man there, so
yep.
Quite a big accomplishment for him that I think or at least that had escaped my mind originally there, that he did last year. So, you want to talk about another reason for Ryan Switzer probably not to sleep too well right now, and obviously congratulations to him. He's probably not sleeping well anyway. They just they just had a baby boy, I think their first child together there, so congratulations to him. But look, I mean, if this guy, if Switzer, if Diontae Johnson's going to be the punt returner, or the plans are for him to be the punt returner in 2020, man, that's just another reason not to keep a guy like Ryan Switzer.
Right, and talent-wise, obviously Diontae Johnson deserves to be the punt returner. He's going to be the best option back there. It's just a question of balancing his own workload and health and injury risk. My suspicion is that he will be the punt returner because he is the best option, and they're not going to be so scared because they had AB doing it for years, and they managed it. So, he's got his goal set high, and rightfully so. Will he hit 1,000 yards? I think it's certainly possible. Obviously, the numbers could be spread out more with Juju getting healthy, but they're going to throw more and have a better quarterback. So I think it all kind of comes out in the wash. So Johnson, I think, will have a big leap forward in year 2.
That those goals of him, they seem obviously pretty obtainable, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, can he hit 1,000 yards, make a Pro Bowl? Sure. Can he be an All-Pro punt returner again? Well, hey, he was last year in half a season, so sure, he can do it again.
The thing I think that sticks out, and going back and doing some quick research right after he had said that, there has been, let me make sure I get this right. He's looking to become just a 13th different player in Steelers history to record 1,000 or more receiving yards in a single season. It seems like that you would think that number would be a little bit higher than that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that was my first thought, but I mean, obviously in the 70s and stuff, the 1,000-yard receiver was a lot rarer than it was today.
Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, Yancey Thigpen, John Stallworth, Hines Ward, Plaxico Burress, Buddy Dial back in Buddy Dial actually did it twice. 1961 and 1963 in let's see, what year was it? In 1961, he hit 1,047 yards on just 53 receptions.
Yeah, big play threat. Who was that? Jim Fink's doing probably back then, I think.
Buddy Dial again in 1963 on just 60 receptions. Both of those in 61, he averaged 19.8. He was the Martavis Bryant of his time. 19.8 yards per catch, and then in 1963, 21.6 yards per reception on 60 total receptions. Can you imagine? I mean, because big plays just probably weren't, that'd be something. Hopefully with the new Pro Football Reference, when they get all that done, maybe we'll have some more complete data going back through the early 60s and all, because just, big plays, I wonder how many, what the ratio of big plays was back then.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think back then you just took a lot of shots, and if you were a really talented player, you were probably much more talented than someone else. Yeah, I mean, they had big plays back then. I think about guys like Jimmy Orr and L.B. Nickel and Buddy Dial. I just pulled up Jimmy Orr's stats here. His rookie year, he had 33 receptions for 910 yards. That's 27.6 yards per reception. So it was just an era where there were just a lot of big plays back then.
Continuing the list of Steelers players who have had 1,000-yard receiving seasons, Mike Wallace, Antonio Holmes, Louis Lips, 1985, had 59 receptions for 1,134 yards. The great Roy Jefferson, a couple of times in 1968 and 69. I was a wee lad. I was just a tiny fellow then. Let's see. And Charles Johnson did it once. 1996, 60 receptions for 1,008 yards. So 12. What did I say? He's looking to become 13. The 13th player to pull off that feat. What are the odds? I think we got a question somewhere related to this too, so I don't want to cover all of it. But what are the odds that both Juju and Diontae can both hit 1,000 yards receiving in 2020?
Certainly possible. It just comes down to how much Ben's going to throw, and assuming that Ben is recovered and healthy and plays like Ben. I don't know what percentage I would put on it. Maybe 55%, somewhere around there, just because if the passes do get spread out and Ben doesn't throw it 600 plus times again, that just statistically alone could make it a little tough for both guys to hit that mark.
Which one is most likely to hit 1,000 yards?
I'm still going Juju.
I think I would too.
Yeah, but I think both obviously can do it, and both are going to be every down type of guys. Juju's rarely going to come off the field. Diontae's your start next, so he's going to get a lot of targets.
Yes, he is. And he also said, I think what's even more, one of the other things that he said during his talk with the media that makes his rookie season even that much more impressive was the fact that he seemingly played most of it with a core muscle injury, groin injury, if you will, that he claims that he suffered, I think, week 2 of the season. That would have been against Seattle there. So the fact that he played through that and still managed to have the kind of season that he had kind of speaks volumes. And of course, we had we scan social media all the time, and obviously there was that photo. When was that? The end of February of him in the hospital?
I think think early February you posted. February 6th, I believe, was the date.
And we kind of unknown at the time, and I think finally it was announced that some sort of core muscle surgery at the time there. So he's obviously had that taken care of there. But the fact that he played through most of the season with that, and boy, there were some. I mean, you even go back to what was it? The game against was it against the Chargers or the Rams where he made the guy miss out on the outside on the quick pass to the outside? I'm mixing
probably the Rams. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the game specifically that it was, but I mean there were other games in there too. The short area quickness off the line that him getting good separation a couple times against the Browns comes to mind there in the short areas there. So props to him to be able to play through that. I think the big takeaway here is that has been fixed. And the other takeaway is that he has not yet been fully cleared, but that sounds like that's going to happen in the very near future.
It does. He says he's been training, he's been working with Ben a little bit, so he should be a full go by the time training camp rolls around. Yeah, I mean, this guy went through a lot last year. Remember, he had that hamstring injury in rookie minicamp and a little bit early in the OTA period, so he's kind of, glad he got the surgery, glad he gets to rest for the first time in a long time, because after graduating or after leaving Toledo, he's got to do, training, combine, pro day, you get thrown in the rookie minicamp after you get drafted, there's just no time to catch your breath, so this is really the first time he's gotten the rest for since who knows, 2 years basically from now.
And if you go back to that kind of that, I think even go all the way back to I think the Friday Night Lights practice, you can find him being mentioned by Mike Tomlin with a groin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he missed some time in camp too. There were a couple days where he missed, and I mean something he just seemed to battle with the whole time. So glad he's healthy, glad he's right. And I remember him saying at the end of last season, I'm hitting the rookie wall, and we're like, it doesn't look like it to us, but he probably really was playing through some pain back then. So yeah, I mean excited to see what he can do, just in the way that UG3 was able to play well before coming to that back injury. Diontae Johnson playing well despite battling through a variety of injuries.
I'm so glad you fired him up.
Yeah, I still take credit for his punt return ability. The All-Pro should be Diontae Johnson and Alex Kozora.
Right, you should get a credit via because it was it the week after or 10 days?
Weeks after. It was 2 weeks after, and after I criticized his punt return, but hey, he improved on it, and he said as much. So I feel vindicated because he basically said what I said about how he improved his technique and that unlocked his ability to make big plays in open field, which we all know he can do.
Right, and he just didn't like the criticism at the time. Mm-hmm. He blocked you, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he did. He gave me the old block. Yeah. It's fine. I mean, it's probably one of those things.
The worst thing these guys can do is read Twitter and read stuff that we write or the other media write. I mean, it's just unless they are. I guess you go back to the dance when Michael Jordan talking about how we fed off of the, what people were saying. I mean, I guess if you really kind of need that kind of stuff, but if you need it that bad, it would seem like you would not block it out totally. I mean, it's not like what you said was wrong. I don't think.
No, I think what I said was 100% correct. But it's probably one of those things where he's got Danny Smith chewing him out, and he knows he screwed up, and he doesn't need to see and hear about it from some person like me. Just some dude. So I get it. There's no offense taken there.
Yeah. I guess he doesn't understand that people can have more than one Twitter account too, but
yeah, I mean, it doesn't like it's going to stop me, but hey, I think he's a great player. I think he's an ascending star, and I think he's going to have a really good 2020.
Yeah. And, it was good to hear him, already having some time in with Ben this offseason to some degree. And it sounds like some more is going to be on the calendar there. He talked about, the trust factor and, everything that goes along with that. And look, I mean, this is a guy that only got to play with Roethlisberger for 6 quarters last season, if that, and I think I tracked it down to something like 28 or 29 offensive plays in total. He obviously had 3 receptions, I think, for 25 yards in the opener against the Patriots there. I think there was like 5 total targets in that game to him, and then in the game against the Seahawks, he did not have a catch. I think he had 1 or 2 targets maybe from Roethlisberger in that game as well too, and then boom, he's saddled with the groin injury, and then of course Roethlisberger out the remainder of the season, and look, Diontae even had the had that concussion, right. later in the season, and then obviously you're talking about hitting the rookie wall like he did last year. So You want to talk about one guy, Mike Tomlin says it all the time, expect big jumps and growth out of second-year players. We talked about the other guys, I think on the last podcast or two podcasts ago, because Diontae Johnson is such an obvious guy there when it comes to second-year jumps and all, and when it comes to receiver positions, especially, this is a guy that you would think going to be up there, I don't know, what, 80 at least 80 catches and flirting with, 800 to 1,000 yards.
Yeah, I think at least 65, 70 receptions. Again, we'll just see what the numbers look like because those things could be spread out a little bit more. But number of passes caught from Ben last year to Diontae Johnson. So Ben to Diontae Johnson complete happened 7 times total, training camp, preseason, regular season. So it's like they're almost rookies again, which is, still take some time to get chemistry together. You lose the offseason, that kind of hurts, but really excited too because he had all that production without Ben, obviously, with really poor quarterback play. And let's see what he can do with a Hall of Famer. It's going to be night and day. And
I'm not very good with writing leads or whatnot. Heck, I don't even really know how to write a good lead. But in the article the other day, post that I wrote, I wrote about, look, I mean, Ben already has kind of 2 new gifts, 2 new toys to play with in a receiving department. Obviously, in a guy like Eric Ebron, who they got in free agency. And then Chase Claypool, at some point, he's going to get used more and more, you would think, as the season goes on to some degree. Got him, obviously, during the draft. And you might as well throw in Diontae Johnson into that group as kind of a new toy as well, too, because of how little of playing time those two had together. So, that's like 3 new weapons for Ben Roethlisberger in 2020.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Johnson also said the things he wants to work on to talk about his overall game, what he says he's going to work on, quote, catching the ball, having stronger hands. I'm going to work on getting my routes better, more tuned up and whatnot. So always little things you can do, and I'm glad he's recognizing that and working on it.
Agreed.
And the other thing with Johnson, though, is I guess the one concern is just some of the injuries because while some of that's, to steal the Colbert phrase, acute, he's got a lot of soft tissue stuff. He is a smaller frame kind of guy, and you do want to make sure he's durable enough to get through a season. I'm not going to say he's injury prone. Last year, again, I think your body's really worn down by season's end because everything you went through pre-draft to your first year rookie and you're learning how to take care of yourself and all that stuff. But you do want to make sure he stays healthy and, durable for an entire season.
And he admitted, I think, as much the other day that he did not have his legs underneath him for most of the season. So,
right.
For him to still lead all rookies last year and kind of have and for us to see kind of some of the things that he was able to do last year, and all the things that he wasn't in top physical condition, obviously, that really gives you some optimism about moving ahead into this season because he obviously has had all this time now to focus on what it takes to be an NFL professional and have his body in tip-top position. So you would hope that all that acute stuff goes to the side and that, we're talking about a fine-tuned second-year wide receiver here from an athletic and really physical preparedness standpoint.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else from Diontae Johnson, or do you want to move on here, Dave? Any other comments you made?
No, I think that's about it. Just really kind of looking forward to seeing that growth with him this season.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he also did say, by the way, and I take this with a grain of salt because he admits he has not been told anything, but his suspicion is that the team will hold training camp in Pittsburgh at the UPMC, Rooney Sports Complex, whatever it's called, instead of Latrobe. I really hope he's wrong, but I suspect he's right.
Yeah, I hope we're all wrong on this, Alex, but I got a feeling we're not. But
yeah. How would they do that, though? Because I said this last night. Obviously there's pros just keep it in Pittsburgh, but then the Panthers are going to be practicing there too. And do you want all those people kind of around each other around the same time?
I guess that's another great point there, and that probably lends itself to something Tomlin had said to Calipari about looking about undisclosed places as well too. Look, here's the thing. If you roped it off properly and I guess kept the fans away from the players,
right.
Now obviously it would cost the fans autograph sessions and photograph sessions and things of that nature or whatnot. Maybe Latrobe's the best place, but on the flip side too, if the university's not back open,
exactly,
are
they going to be support staff there and all that?
Right?
Available?
Is there going to be the other things that need to go along with that? On top of it, that's going to make it challenging.
Right. I haven't even looked of St. Vincent's status. I guess I should look that up. I mean, there are a lot of pros. I think that you could keep the fans away from players in Latrobe. Yeah, just no autographs, no fence line, all that stuff. Just force them to sit in the field, and there can't be any player fan interaction. I think that would keep them safe. The concern, I guess, would be again just support staff, the status of the campus as a whole, and then just having all those players in dorm rooms. Is that ideal for them away from families at a time like this? Probably not. So there's pros and cons to each, and as you said, it could be a third location, because there's downsides to doing it in Pittsburgh as well.
I hate to play Debbie Downer here on the Friday, but we've seen over the years, really the last 4 or 5 years, more and more teams around the NFL switch from reserve locations to really back to their home team facilities or whatnot, and really kind of the fans been kind of shut out for the most part. I mean, I think we're seeing more and more of that. Was it the Eagles that did it last off season?
Yeah.
Now, how much fan interaction is that gone now with them? I can't remember.
I think they have like 1 or 2 practices that's kind of open to the fans, but yeah, they've shut things down pretty dramatically.
Are we seeing, because just of the nature of evolution, could the Steelers be at a point now where they make a decision to get away from Latrobe?
My guess is their goal is to return, at least as long as Colbert and Tomlin and the Rooneys are there. So I'm not there yet, but I think obviously who knows what the landscape of things could be like, and if they find out they like it better in Pittsburgh, then they want to make that change. I don't know. I really hope though that's not on the table.
I obviously don't as well, but I mean it's kind of they've been going there for over 50 years now, and it obviously it's a great tradition, and boy, a small town like Latrobe. Really, I mean, that's a lot of economy there, right?
They rely on it.
During that span of, really a month in total from top to bottom there. I just worry now that this potentially would, maybe lead to, that coming to an end. Because you're seeing more and more of that. Because look, it is a chore, to move the equipment out there and have the players stay out there and not with their families. And of course, now in the era of the pandemic and stuff like that, I just thought it was worth throwing out there. I mean, hopefully, my negative outlook or potential negative outlook doesn't come to fruition there. But I have to admit that thought did cross my mind these past few weeks here.
Sure. No, it's a fair point. It's kind of depressing as it is to say, but it's a fair point. Yeah, with SVC again, the support staff. Remember, they hire a bunch of college kids basically to work security. Golf carts, taking those guys from place to place, and just general security. And if those college kids aren't going to be there because they can't go back or they don't want to go back or whatever the case is, then it's kind of really hard to have a safe and secure practice. So, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully we'll find out. I mean, they got to make a decision sometime pretty soon. They can't do this, July 20th and make a decision. So I think within the next 2 weeks or so, we'll find out what their plans are.
Yeah, and here we are, boy, in the May, and I think last year I wrote June 12th was the day that the official dates were released. And look, the team can report, I think 7 to 10 days, something like that, earlier this year because of playing in the Hall of Fame game. So we're probably about 10 days or 11 days away from knowing what the outlook is for the Steelers training camp in St. Vincent College.
I mean, I guess it could be a little bit later just because they want to give it as much time as possible and work out. It's obviously it's not just about putting a schedule together this year, but yeah, I mean, they can't wait too long on this stuff because you do have to make a decision and just have a plan going forward.
All right, maybe we should get some positive back in this thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It just makes me sad. I was thinking about it last night.
Despair and agony on me. All right, go ahead.
All right, let's transition to Minkah Fitzpatrick. We talked about the whole top 100 snub, and he was on CBS, and they were talking Pete Briscoe. But Minkah Fitzpatrick also joined the local media like Diontae Johnson after our last podcast and just talked about mostly the same stuff he has been talking about already. He was saying he's just trying to prepare for the year basically like any other year, because that's kind of all he can do right now. And also talked about how he thinks the continuity and kind of the experience of this defense now, another year older, another year more experienced, is going to make them better suited to deal with offenses and pre-snap motion, and just communication in general is going to be a whole lot better.
Boy, Minkah Fitzpatrick twice within a week. We're probably not going to hear from him again until training camp gets underway. Probably. I don't think he's a big fan of having to do those kind of interviews, but I thought he did a good job in both of them. Talking about the one on CBS Sports with Bryant McFadden, and of course the one this past week on the Zoom call there. You go all the way back to what he had to say during the week of the Pro Bowl about him being, being open to moving around more. You and I have talked quite a bit off and on about that since then as well too. And then he fast forwards to this past week. And he says, "Well, that's not a goal of mine to move around, but I'm open to doing it," kind of thing. I don't think there's any way around him not having to move around to some degree. Now, is it going to be like it was with him in Miami, having to play more of a linebacker, strong safety type role very often? No, but I think just from a disguise standpoint, just from being able to maximize his ability and his ability to his instinctual stuff, which he even admitted, he does things well instinctually. Especially as a deep free safety type there, he almost has to move around. I mean, you just cannot keep him tied to the post like you did for most of last season there. So I think he begrudgingly kind of accepts that, because I think he'd much rather play kind of the deep role and just be back there and pick off passes all day long. But on the flip side, these opposing quarterbacks are going to definitely know where he's at on the field at all times this year. And look, I mean, you go through the list of quarterbacks that this team is going to play this year. There's a lot of youngins in there as well, too. And I think you can set yourself up to confuse a few of these guys by moving Minkah around a little bit more. I mean, we're not talking 20 times a game, obviously.
Right.
But I think that's an aspect that's got to happen this year to make the defense even better. And look, what he said about the continuity and how this defense should be, really good. I mean, that goes back to what you and I have talked about here for the last several of weeks here. I mean, there is reason, even though you lose Javon Hargrave during the offseason there to free agency, there is a reason to be excited as long as they stay healthy about this 2020 defense from top to bottom. I'm not just talking about the starters, because you've got, as we read through the list, a good 8-9 guys carry over from last season that are going to be back on his 2020 unit as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to give a very Bill Simmons-y dumb story here, so buckle up. But when you said about Minkah needing to move around, I just got a chip yesterday. I bought a fake owl to scare the birds away around my house, because I'm tired of these birds that just fly around the house all the time. They poop in my car, and I'm mad about it. And so what they say is, the owl's supposed to scare them away, but you have to move the owl every few days so birds don't get wise to it and realize this thing's not real. And that's what the Steelers have to do with Minkah. They have to move him around a little bit so quarterbacks don't get wise to where he's at and recognize he's not going to be a threat if he's playing in the post, and we're just going to throw away from him, because that's what they did the second half of last year. So Minkah's got to be the owl that moves around enough so offenses and quarterbacks have to respect him.
That's a hoot of an analogy.
Oh, it is late May, as you can tell. I'm talking about fake owls, and Dave's making puns.
Yeah, I don't think you ran afoul there.
Oh my God. I'm done.
Thank you, folks. I'll be here all week.
Try the real.
I'll be here at the Las Vegas Hilton.
Yeah, you're the new comedy in Vegas, right?
Yeah. Try the veal. Make sure to tip your cocktail waitress there. No, I think that's a good analogy. I mean, you do. Yeah. I mean, it really is. Quite honestly, it's perfect, because you do have to keep them on their toes. And once again, I think the big thing that sticks out when you go through this list of opposing quarterbacks that this team is going to play this year, is that there are some youngins in there.
Yep.
You play Phillip Rivers and a couple other experienced guys there, but you play a lot of youngins in there as well too, and the more you can keep those guys on their heels, the better. And everything that he said, about knock on wood, let's hope this defense can stay healthy, because really it has a good chance of being not only top 5, top 3, but the best defense in the NFL, I think, in 2020.
And the quote was worth retelling, so let me read it here because I think he was pretty honest in his assessment. This is Fitzpatrick saying, quote, "We had a lot of young guys on our defense last year that didn't fully grasp the concepts and everything like that and weren't able to think on their toes 110% of the time, and teams started picking up on that. They started making people move around, make us think, and communicate during the snap. That's been a real big emphasis for all of us this offseason, working on that second level of communication after guys move, after the offense adjusts." So, yeah, I mean, you had guys like Devin Bush last year, Minkah obviously coming in midseason, Steven Nelson's first year. Those, Nelson's not a young guy, but a new guy, and Bush is obviously a young guy. So those guys, obviously Devin Bush, can be able to take over this year. Same secondary for the first, time, having the same secondary in consecutive years for the first time in a long time. That's going to just help this defense get on the same page, communicate more effectively, and maximize their talent.
I mean, we could be talking about, the best defense since when? 2008?
Last Super Bowl, yeah. I mean, I think this defense will be, just like last year, where it's going to be a top group. It's going to get a lot of pressure. It's going to create a lot of takeaways. It's going to be stingy in the red zone. I mean, what is the weakness of this defense right now? I mean, aside from nose tackle, there really isn't one.
I would think up the middle, potentially,
some safety depth.
And safety depth, and that's pretty much it right now.
Yeah. But in terms of your starters, I mean, outside of nose tackle, you got your group.
Right. I mean, it looks great on paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, the continuity is big, and having Terrell Austin, you got some good coaching staffs, and Keith Butler. And as much as I've been critical of him, he did a better job last year. He had a lot more talent to work with, and that always helps. But he did do a better job last year matching personnel.
Yeah, that's another great point about Austin as well too. And you got another year of continuity here now with that, and I don't think you can undersell whatever it was. We wish that we could tell people more how much of his fingerprints and input went into it. I mean, I would think quite a good deal, because look, this is another former defensive coordinator on top of it, and a guy that's particularly been good with secondaries, I think, over the years as well too. So to some degree, that those fingerprints were on what happened. And look, it doesn't hurt to have good players either, right?
Yeah, have 11 first round, second round picks. I mean, adding talent certainly makes the coach look good.
Right.
But yeah, Terrell Austin, at the very least, he's basically, I mean, I know he's still listed as like senior assistant, whatever, but he's at the very least the DB's coach and might have probably a decent influence on the game plan too as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else from Minkah? I think he talked about how he wants to prepare as though camp preseason will take place as normal. Was named NFL.com's under 25 team. Anything else from Minkah that's worth talking about?
No, I mean, just please stay healthy. I think with him and obviously the entire team, but the two guys that we just highlighted there, Diontae Johnson and Minkah Fitzpatrick, you would expect some more growth out of this upcoming season here out of both those. So two good guys for the Steelers to put out there, and we actually learned a little bit from both this past week as well.
Dave, NFL has passed a couple of rules, and one rule that they did not pass, the one that they did not pass, they've technically tabled, but it seems like it has no chance of happening for 2020, is the 4th and 15 onside kick that we talked about. That was, I believe, voted down, but ultimately tabled by owners, but again, probably has no chance to actually have any momentum this year, and the Steelers are one of the teams against it. Art Rooney saying that him and Tomlin were against the idea, too much of a gimmick. Are you disappointed in the proposal getting voted down? Are you cool with it?
Yeah, I need the sad trombone sound right here. Wah, 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 but I'm me, I'm over the year. I'm a traditionalist too. I'm the guy that does. I get mad even when I go downstairs and my coffee mug's not even in the same place. My wife moves it. It usually starts the beginnings of a very bad day when that happens. But when I kind of liked this idea, this proposal. And I'm not, even though we all know at some point the kickoff is probably going to, I don't know if it's going to be, I would think it probably still happen in my lifetime that the kickoff goes away completely just because of the safety of the game. I'm not saying remove the onside kick completely, but I do like the option. I don't know. Could you put something in there with a stipulation of so many points down, or I think maybe this original proposal had something to do with time left in the game.
Yeah, they had to be trailing. It couldn't be used more than twice a game. Team had to be trailing, and there might have been some sort of time thing. It could not happen in overtime. So there were a lot of
stipulations.
What's the word? Yeah, stipulations for when it could and could not be used.
Yeah, well, I have a feeling we'll see it at some point. Maybe something related to it. Maybe a different distance. I don't know, but I could see it happening. Do you see it as being too gimmicky or no?
No, I don't feel like it.
Do you understand the why they would use the word gimmicky on that? I think that's the thing that shocked me most of all about the news yesterday was Rooney defining it as gimmicky.
Well, the NFL is not one to welcome change in any big, significant type of ways. It takes a long time for them to make any sort of meaningful changes. So I'm not surprised by that. I mean, Rooney and those guys are probably more old school. They've been around onside kicks forever. I don't think it's too gimmicky, though. I think you just want a play that gives the quote-unquote kicking team, although obviously not kicking here, an opportunity to get the ball back. And on an onside kicks, the rate was just super low. It just felt like just a Hail Mary of trying to be able to recover it. So I'm open to trying to do something that slightly increases the odds of the team that had just scored getting the ball back and making those end games more competitive and closer, and not just the formality of, okay, we're going to onside kick here, we're not going to recover it, and the game's going to end. So I'm all for trying to find something a little different.
What if you made the team? What if you made it along the lines? I'm just buckshotting this out there. In order to get the ball back a certain way, maybe they have to go for two after a touchdown score, and get that two from like the 15-yard line, because you're dealing with closed space. You're talking about making a 4th and 15 situation even tougher because you're not having the amount of field space to work with. And then, in other words, not only do you get the 2 points for converting, you get the ball back at your own 25-yard line.
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess that's super gimmicky, isn't it?
I mean, I could go. I was thinking about some super gimmicky stuff. Yeah, I don't know if I want to have other plays be affected by this play. Could you do something where, and if we're gonna be gimmicky, let's be gimmicky here. I'll dance with you, Dave. What if the defense gets like 12 players on the field for that 4th and 15 instead of 11, and so something like that to make it even harder? I don't know. I mean, if you want to go gimmicky, I mean, we can dance a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting as well too. Interesting. I didn't think about that, but yeah, overall, am I surprised that it got tabled? No.
Right.
I was surprised though to hear it termed gimmicky by Art Rooney.
Yeah, I just want them to come up with a way to make those situations more effective. And I'm not saying it has to be a 20% success rate, but again, the number now is what is it, 2-3% of onside kicks get recovered? Traditional. I mean, I don't know. I'd like to see something a little different.
Plus, you're eliminating the car crash. One extra. One more kind of close. Area car crash, if you will, by eliminating onside kick, which you wouldn't be doing initially. But I think we both agree at some point the kickoff's going to be done for.
Probably, yeah. But it won't be this year, at least, and we'll see what happens in the future. Among the rules that were passed, nothing crazy. Teams can now bring back 3 players from IR to return. That's now up from 2. Automatic replays are not permanent for all scoring plays and turnovers. That was pretty much a no-brainer. The loophole for the Belichick-Vrabel clock manipulation, which I forget how to describe entirely, but just letting more and more clock tick off, that's been closed.
That's old false start under
right.
X amount of minutes left where it runs off time, right?
Yeah, so you take a penalty, like it's 4th down, you take a false start, and then the clock will run once they reset the play clock and you get it to take off an extra, 30 seconds, you could just keep doing it in theory, I think, over and over again, right?
Right.
So that's been closed up. Plus, the owners voted to extend the partnership with EA for Madden through 2026. That's obviously not a football rule, but just a NFL, gaming whole thing. So that relationship has been extended, and there's probably a lot of people, myself included, that kind of wish it wasn't, because the quality of Madden has been poor, but that's not really relevant for Sunday action.
All right. What about the pass interference review?
Oh, right. So they've eliminated the reviewing all pass interference, the disaster that was last year. So that's gone, right? That I'm interpreting that rule correctly.
Yeah, on Thursday it was announced that the NFL would not move forward with pass interference replay review for the 2020 season. The rule was implemented last offseason after the New Orleans Saints, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's that was a farce.
Mm-hmm. That was just a disaster, and I'm still mad about them calling PI on Terrell Edmonds against Seattle, because
that's a great
PI.
point. That's a great point. What a huge play that was, looking back, It
was ultimately lost that game. And then the last thing was they expanded defenseless protection for players on kick and punt returns. I forget what that exactly means, but there has been more protection to some of those hits now could be called hitting a defenseless player on kicks and punts.
Going back to the look, I'm a fan of adding a third player to the IR thing. Now having the ability to return 3 players designated to return. I think it should end there, though. I don't think you should go much further than that.
What's the downside to not putting a number on it? Just saying unlimited number of IR to return guys. Like a baseball DL. We can when they're healthy after 8 weeks, whatever, they just come back.
I think you maybe run into the potential of maybe players being used to lengthen your roster. Maybe.
Yeah, like a little stash kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, would you have a league doctor certify that that a player's injury is indeed 8 weeks long? In other words, are you just using it as a housing, like a minor league system almost, just to keep people and not have to worry about dropping them or something like that? So I worry more about maybe a competitive balance situation than anything else. I mean, look, most of these guys that suffer serious type injuries anyway are usually gone for the year.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, knees, MCLs, ACL, those kind of things, unless they happen early enough, kind of things there. But I am a fan of the guy with the, look at Ryan Switzer, the back injury or whatnot last year, and Roosevelt Nix with his injury. Both those guys had the Steelers made it to the playoffs, were on track to be designated to return players. So I like the aspect that maybe if you lost a guy to a semi-serious injury midway through the season, that you could get him back for the playoffs there. So,
sure.
But I have no data to back this up, but it feels like 3 should have been the number all along. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get the concept. I'm in favor of the idea of letting those guys come back. It's kind of silly the NFL for the longest time didn't have that mechanism the way that every other sport did. I just wanted is it 3? Is it 5? Is it unlimited? But you're right about the competitive balance and teams maybe stashing guys and playing those games that teams are want to do.
The other aspect to come out of that rule, I think it was more of maybe a clarification, is that players once placed on IR have to miss 8 games, not 8 weeks. Okay, so and I'm trying to remember how it was written kind of before that, if it was indeed 8. In other words, if there was a bye week in there, did that count as missing a week,
And now it's not going to count.
Right. Now the player, once he goes on IR, has to miss 8 games, not 8 weeks. So that's a very important clarification that they made. Now, I think there was maybe part of this proposal that centered around maybe wanted a player. In other words, if you lost the guy during the preseason to a long-term injury, could you immediately just throw him on IR? In other words, can one player not have been on the 53 at the start of the season? And I think they have done away with. I mean, I think they have withheld what the previous stipulation was. So, in other words, once again, if a guy is going to be wants to be a designated to return player right there at the start of the regular season, he has to still be on that initial cut down to 53 and then can be moved from the initial 53 prior to the week 1 game to IR to earn the ability to be a candidate to be designated to return. Does that make sense the way I'm saying it?
Right, yeah. So same rules before. If you want to be a candidate, you got to make the 53 initially, then you can be moved after the initial 53 is set.
I think there was some push to maybe getting, at least one of those players not have to adhere to that rule, I think. But yeah. I don't think that went through.
Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't hear anything about that. All right. So, yeah, nothing earth-shattering there. I'm glad the PI stuff has been eliminated. We're back to normal because that was a mess. I'm fine with the IR expansion. And, yeah, I mean, I'm fine with basically all those rule changes, though I was hoping the 4th and 15 onside kick would get passed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, once again, I think the biggest thing coming out of yesterday was just. I mean, and I'm not going to. I promise I won't lose any sleep over it. But it was just Art Rooney II calling it too gimmicky.
Yeah. All right, Dave. Here, fun little question for you. I had this discussion on Twitter. Really good discussion we had yesterday because I think it was some Twitter account, I forget, Sunday Night Football, the NFL, whoever was asking about who the greatest athlete in NFL history was. And then I was thinking about, okay, well, who's the greatest athlete in Steelers history? An athlete can be a subjective term. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I wanted to get your take on, who potentially you would put as the best athlete in Steelers history. A lot of names, no wrong answers, a lot of history, obviously. But yeah, did any name come to mind whenever I threw that question out to you?
Immediately, and it was 3 of them. And it started with my childhood with Lynn Swann and that catch in the Super Bowl against Dallas.
Yep.
And really another one that he made along the sideline as well, too. The body couldn't, he was at the time, I mean, there was the whole ballet and stuff like that with him. But, boy, the way he could contort his body, he was that, I mean, he was a big athlete at the time, on the Superstars competition, which I know means absolutely nothing to you, but just a great, I thought, all-around athlete at the time. A guy that you could see maybe being a track star, being, just any, a guy that could probably do the decathlon, kind of guy in Lynn Swann. So that was obviously the first name that popped in my head. Rod Woodson and Troy Polamalu were the other two that popped in my head.
Yeah, no, I think Woodson and Troy were the 2 most popular choices I got back. I think the younger crowd went Troy, the little older crowd went Woodson. Woodson for me is probably number 1 just because this dude could have been an Olympian track star had he wanted to and focused his athleticism in his career there. And that's to me the important part with my definition, at least top athlete, is somebody that was a multi-sport star. I saw comments about, this was to the question of the best athlete in NFL history was a lot of Deion Sanders, a lot of Bo Jackson, guys that were Woodson could have been just a gold medalist potentially, in contention. He qualified for the 84 Olympics. So that to me was just so rare. And then more minorly, but that recovery from his torn ACL, I mean, what kind of other athlete would come back from that in the same season? That was just remarkable.
Yeah, that's a great point. Did you get any push for older Steelers like Swann or anything?
Yeah, there was definitely some Swann. I have a list of names on Steelers Depot, so if you guys want to chime in on the conversation, you can. Let's see what other older names here do I have. John Kolb, an offensive lineman. I think probably he was more strong than athlete, but he was in the strongest man competitions and all that. Carlton Hasserling, the wrestler. LeVon Kirkland, we got some Kirkland in there for sure. Bettis, I mean, in terms of the feet relative to it, like pound for pound, Bettis might be the best athlete just because nobody of his size should move the way that he did.
What about Craig Wolfley and all the boxing and all that he did,
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah. Troy,
I don't think you'd have a lot of support for that, but I mean, you want to talk about guys that, could do other things outside of football,
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's important. I went really old school here with a couple of guys. Lynn Noy, who's considered one of the best athletes in Michigan history, runner, receiver, returner. Paul Moss, which I know is a super deep cut, but 1933, I think one of the best athletes of his time. He did everything. He was a basketball player, baseball player, tennis, bowler, golfer, led the NFL in receiving in 1933, caught the Steelers' first ever touchdown, offensive touchdown. So, yeah, I mean, there's no wrong answers. So you could even go with like Martavis Bryant, in terms of, not that he had the longest career, but that dude was a freaky guy. So, I mean, there's no wrong answers here.
And Dwight Stone, another fast one,
Sure, Pierce, I know the hands weren't there, but you couldn't not catch that guy. I mean, he was the fastest guy on the field.
Yeah, that makes for a decent discussion there. I'm going back and I've started a series, and it's going to be I'm surprised in today's segment, at least the 1972 segment of it, and I think the 73 of it is actually. I'm amazing myself because I'm finding some of this footage. What I'm doing is I'm going back to the last 50 years of Steelers history, and I'm going to show people the longest play from scrimmage. Offensive play from scrimmage for the Steelers in each of those years there. So I thought that would make an interesting series there. And Terry Bradshaw and Dave Smith were 1970 and 1971 both involved in the longest plays of those two seasons for the Steelers. The first one against the Packers in 1970 in a game that Terry Bradshaw completed just 3 passes in. He took over at halftime for Terry Hanratty against the Packers. That was like only the 7th game ever played at Three Rivers Stadium. Obviously, it was Bradshaw's rookie season, and obviously Dave Smith's rookie season as well too there. But he got loose over the middle and rumbled. 80-something yards on that touchdown. And then in 1971, and I had to dig deep. I actually found there's a clip on YouTube if you search out Dave Smith there that shows the end of that play with him not getting into the end zone and tossing the football aside. But I actually found the pass completion that goes along with it as well too, which I was pretty proud of myself being able to find yesterday. But that unfortunately, that was a 49 that went in the books as a 49-yard completion on a Monday Night Football game in 1971 that season, and it should have been like a 52-yard completion and a touchdown at the time. The play came in the 4th quarter. The Steelers were already down big, so it really was kind of insignificant there, but it probably wasn't insignificant to Chuck Noll at the time, with Dave Smith tossing that thing away at the 2 or 3 yard line there, bouncing back through the end zone for a touchback there. The following season, about week 6 or week 7, Dave Smith was traded away to the Oilers at that time there. So that's just a series that I've got going, and I've got a real big no-name coming as part of that series today in one of the posts there that was on the receiving end of the longest play in one of those 2 seasons there. So that's just something I'm working on, to keep people hopefully entertained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I love to look back in Steelers history. That was the Deshaun Jackson before Deshaun Jackson type moment there. So, and that first one, right, was the second longest play or touchdown
at the time. It was the second longest play in Steelers history for sure. And once again, I think that play put the Steelers up in that game as well too against the Packers, but unfortunately the Packers came roaring back. Boy, we need an NFL Classic or something like that, network or something like that. I was thinking about this last night, and I can't get enough of rewatching any Steelers game, but specifically, man, and I know you're a fan of the older NFL as well too. How great would it be to have, an NFL Classic where, a couple times a week they showed a couple of your favorite teams' old games, things that you just can't unearth. Take my money, kind of situation there. But once again, I hope to find the video of a lot of these plays through the 70s. I'll have a lot more luck when I get on into the 80s and the 90s and, of course, the odd years and all like that. But I'm going to try my best to get as many of these compiled as possible. And when I can't get video, hopefully I'll have some newspaper clippings or something to go along with it.
Yeah, we both love the history of it. Unfortunately, some of that gets lost and forgotten, and people just are apathetic to it, which I understand. In today's modern era, people really don't care about stuff that happened in the 70s or, God forbid, anything prior to that. But yeah, I think it's history that is good to be reminded of and tells you how you got here. And by the way, I looked this up last night. I know that Smith had the second longest touchdown, receiving touchdown in Steelers history. You know who was number one at that point prior to that play?
Nickel.
Nope, Buddy Dial, the guy
Buddy
you
Dial,
mentioned
okay.
earlier. So we've come full circle on that conversation.
There you go.
How
about that?
88 yards in 61. So yeah, now that's receiving only. That's not the longest touchdown in general, right? That's just receiving touchdown.
Well, I mean, at the time, I think that was the longest touchdown for the Steelers from scrimmage, right?
Yeah, if you're not counting return or interception returns, then maybe I'd have to look that up. But I know there's been longer, obviously, kick returns and interception returns prior to that point.
Okay.
Because they had a 99-yarder in their first year, 1933. Butch Carter went 99 yards, but that was a pick six. That wasn't a play from scrimmage. So anyway, but yeah, really really cool play, really good job. So today, it's every single year. You're gonna do it just literally year by year.
Year by year, the longest offensive play from scrimmage. This is just offense.
Okay.
So there's going to be. I haven't looked ahead. I haven't spoiled it for myself yet to see how many of these are like runs.
Okay.
But, I mean,
and so 72 is not going to be the Immaculate Reception.
No, I'm doing regular season.
Okay, regular season.
Right, regular season.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to see that. And you said that 72 is the one where it's like obscure and no one would know it unless
72 or 73. I can't remember because I put a couple ahead and tried to hide the specifics from the rest of the back end of my brain there. So I would be a little bit surprised myself when I wrote some of the details about it.
All right, fair enough. Dave, last thing you wanted to talk about here was what's the woman's name? I want to get her name here. Talking about the toughest 4-game stretch the Steelers have.
Cynthia Freeland from NFL.com.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is kind of something I think threw out on Twitter right after the Steelers schedule was released. Is what is the toughest 4-game span that the Steelers have this season? This season. Hold on, let me pull up the post here. I'm behind you a little bit here. Can you send it to me? Oh, no, there it is. NFL analytics expert identifies Steelers' toughest 4-game stretch. And not surprisingly, she chose week 4 through week 7. And week 4 obviously starts with the Steelers on the road against the Tennessee Titans. Week 5, they're at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. Week 6, division game at home against the Cleveland Browns. And then week 7, the week right before their bye week, on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. So, yeah, I mean, you got Tennessee, Philadelphia, both going to be very, very tough games, and then obviously two games in division there in week 6 and week 7. So I agree. I think that is the toughest 4-game stretch for the Steelers in 2020.
Yeah, certainly hard to argue. And so yeah, they're going to be battle tested for sure. I know it isn't conventionally the quote unquote easiest schedule, though I kind of reject those terms because things change so much from here to then. But yeah, I think that's as good a pick of any.
I think the plus side about that being the toughest part of the schedule is it does happen kind of in the first half of the season there, and we will still be kind of maybe learning a little bit about what the impact of maybe this virtual offseason has on things, although you would think maybe around week 4, week 5, the worm would be turning a little bit there. Not so much of an advantage there, but that's worth the discussion part. All 4 of those games are 1 p.m. Eastern start times for the Steelers, so you have the continuity of not having a primetime game mixed in there, so at least you have that continuity in it. And the longest distance traveled by the Steelers during that 4-game span would be their trip to Nashville, which is 462 miles. So a lot of things I think work into the favor of the Steelers within that what would be perceived as maybe their toughest 4-game stretch of the 2020 season.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Dave, anything else you want to talk about here, or do you want to get to some reader emails and close out the show?
Boy, have we hit on everything?
I think so. I should mention, by the way, that Cam Hayward, Minkah Fitzpatrick will be featured in the NFL Game Pass / NFL Network tape breakdown, which I'm really excited about. They have never had a Steeler on before, and I cannot wait.
That's the Todd Haley gift right there, jumping up and down, excited. That's going to be absolutely fantastic, especially for guys like us that really love the X's and O's aspect, and for them to have a couple of Steelers players in there as well this year. Just that's something that'll keep us involved for sure during the offseason.
Yeah, Minkah is going to be, I think, mid to late June, and Hayward is going to air, I think, later in August. So kind of spread out well. So excited to see those guys break down the Steelers.
All right, you ready for some emails?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, Michael Carlson, how about this? Greetings from the Czech Republic. How about that for starting off a Friday email? I really enjoyed the interview Alex gave on the Stan Savran show. Great job. I wonder if you guys could discuss Keith Butler as a defensive coordinator of 3 or 4 years ago with Keith Butler I wonder if you guys could discuss Keith Butler as defensive coordinator of 3 or 4 years ago with Keith Butler as DC of 2019. The D of a few years ago appeared to be predictable and had tons of communication problems. I attributed a lot of that to Butler, who seemed over the head at times. The 2019 defense seemed harder for opposing offenses to read and had fewer communication problems. Did Butler change? Do you attribute all the improvements to personnel change, or was some of this the outside help with Tomlin, Austin, etc.? Many of us were ready to see the Steelers move on from Butler. No talk of that now with all the improvements, but I'm not sure how much credit to give him. I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on the site or on the podcast. Thanks, guys. Michael. Great question, and the answer to that, Michael, is yes. But I'll let Alex take first stab, and then I'll add in my detailed thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, comparing him then to now, obviously he's kind of, because whenever he first took over for LeBeau, he was basically running the same scheme of cover 3. They weren't going to change things too much, and they had the same problems under Butler, and even more so because he wasn't as good coach as LeBeau, obviously, than they had at the end of the LeBeau era. Now it's much more of a man-heavy type defense. It's probably more modern and better suited for today's NFL. Plus, they have obviously better man corners to handle it. I would compare him just even to 2018 to 2019. Like I said earlier, they did a better job of matching personnel, being smarter with their personnel groupings and matchups. I still remember, obviously, all the John Bostic on Keenan Allen stuff 2 years ago, linebackers on receivers, dealing with slot receivers, and they didn't have good answers to that. I remember the Steelers playing their dime defense on the goal line versus the Saints 2 years ago, when the Saints are in goal line personnel, 6 offensive linemen on the field, Steelers are in dime, and of course the Saints scored a touchdown. So you didn't see those issues as much last year, and I want to give Butler credit for that, because I don't want to put the blame on him when things are bad and not give any credit when things are good, because things were very good last year. But he's got the same issue as Fichtner, where it feels like those guys both need elite talent to look good as a coach. If you don't have just this crazy talent, again, 10, 11 first-round picks, all this investment, money put in the cornerbacks, trading for Minkah, etc., that made the defense finally look good. And could you just argue that, listen, really any mostly competent DC with that group of talent could make it work? Yeah, you probably could, the way that Fichtner looked good with Ben and AB and all the talent they had in 2018. So that's still the concern, is, if Butler's doing a good job, the defense looks good. But of course it looks good because they've invested literally everything into that unit for the last 5+ years. So there was improvement last year. He's better than he was, but still, I think there's still some question marks there.
You could have a one of the league's best defensive coordinators, over the years, but if you don't have the talent to execute some of the things that you want to execute especially in today's NFL, it's tough. And this is in no way, shape, or form a defense for Keith Butler, but for a couple of years, I mean, he didn't have the best of talent on the defensive side of football.
Sure, but whose talent did he maximize? Because that coach, that good coach with a bad talent, would at least maximize the talent. Maybe it still wouldn't be good enough.
Sure.
But does Butler do that to anyone?
Sure, but also, too, I think he was kind of handicapped at kind of having to work through the evolution because he's an old-school coach. I mean, make no mistake about it, and obviously working under Dick LeBeau for all those years and all like that. I mean, he is rooted in a lot of what Dick LeBeau did, and there's accepting the innovation part and accepting more pattern matching and not that that's new, but we just didn't see a lot of that because the Steelers, because of the way the game was, it was stop the run. Don't give up the big play. Keep everything in front of you. And if you mixed up your blitzes and designs enough through there, and you had the ability to occasionally, and you had a guy like Troy Polamalu freelancing, like LeBeau did at times, and making some plays where you're going, no. Okay, great play. That tends to make defensive coordinators look better along the way there. But
sure.
Look, is Keith Butler ever going to go down in history as, boy, what a great defensive coordinator Keith Butler is. Here's another thing we don't know. How much in the last couple of years has Mike Tomlin's fingerprints been on this thing? We just don't know the answer to that.
It's a growing influence for sure, but I still think Butler's calling the plays the majority of the time.
All right, but we think, right?
Well, from what I see, whenever they cut to the sideline, it's Butler with the play sheet most of the time.
Right, but Tomlin's got a little card in his hands, it seems, at times too,
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, Butler does things. Well, I think he designs some of those linebacker blitzes better than most DCs in football. I mean, obviously he's a linebacker. I think he's great with the front seven and some of those schemes and getting Vince Williams free in the B gap and stuff like that. He does a great job with that. Some of the secondary stuff was the bigger concern. So has there been improvement? Sure. I understand lack of talent, maybe needing to evolve, but those to me just are excuses. Those are responsibilities of the coach. Those are things you have to deal with. That comes with the territory. And while Butler's done a better job, his defense obviously played at an elite level last year. I think that's primarily just because of all the talent that they've forced down Butler's throat to finally make this defense work.
Well, here's the thing. 2020 now, we've talked time and time again about how good we think this defense could and should be, okay? What kind of measuring stick is this? How much credit will Keith Butler get if this is, let's say this is the league's top one or two defenses during the regular season? This team goes on to have some semblance of a deep playoff run, and we all hope a championship. But how much credit or non-credit will Butler get, or is the devil going to be in the details?
Well, I think it's always in the details. I think obviously baseline level, the defense is number one. They have a strong season. Of course, the defense coordinator deserves credit. How much? I can't give a percentage to it. But again, I still think the driving factor is drafting defense literally every single year with a top pick, signing Joe Hayden, signing Steven Nelson, trading for Minkah, all of those things that weren't really Butler's doing just to give this defense as much talent as humanly possible. So
if this goes on to be a Super Bowl winning team in 2020 and the defense played a huge part of it, which they, I think in order for such a thing to happen, they would, we're going to have the same opinion on Keith Butler a year from now.
Well, again, I would give him credit because obviously he's part of that, and the coach is still the coach, and you can have great talent, and if the coaching is terrible, I mean, it's not always going to work. So it's not that I would not give Butler any credit. I give him credit for the turnaround last year, and I would give him credit for any success in 2020. But again, I still think that primary driving factor is the team building of adding all the special players, the TJ Watts, the Fitzpatricks, the Joe Haydens of the world, things that weren't Butler's doing as the driving factor behind this defense.
All right. How was that to open up with a question from the Czech Republic there? Danny Porter writes in and says, great job providing the best Steeler coverage on the planet. Can you discuss the importance, if any, on spacing for the offense? I've listened to a number of analysts discuss how great New England is at it, and that it was one of the primary reasons for their success. I will say this: it's easy to pick out, especially the last several years with the Julian Edelmans and the Wes Welkers and along those lines in that offense, and Tom Brady, obviously, with the way that they use spacing and the way that they use the rubs and along those lines, because they were that offense for several years there were kings at getting people open right off the snap there. Look, we see the Steelers run a lot of bunch formation there. If there's one thing offensively that maybe the Steelers don't do well enough over the years is the spacing aspect.
Yeah, my whole thought was and this was a Haley issue. and a Fichtner issue to an extent as well is that some of these route concepts were too independent of each other, where everyone was just running a curl and everyone was expected to win their matchup. And that can work when you have great receiver talent, when you had AB and the old Young Money crew and all that. But whenever that talent's a little lesser or maybe developing, you want to have routes be more dependent on each other to create space. And yeah, it's really important. And plus, you just want to let your playmakers have space to work with. If you get Juju one-on-one, he's tough to tackle. Get Diontae Johnson one-on-one, he'll make you miss. Anthony McFarland, what he could offer this year, get him maybe in space one-on-one with a linebacker. He's going to win more often than not. So just that space will allow those playmakers to make those big plays.
Good offensive coordinators, along with receivers, guys that understand what they're looking at and can also do site adjustments on their routes, because if and then kind of situations that's really where you get get some good spacing and can get some guys free, is by and a lot of that sometimes has got to happen on the fly. And you'll hear coaches say, well, can that player play fast enough? And unfortunately, a lot of young players struggle with that aspect of being able to being on the same page with the quarterback, and the quarterback knowing that if he sees the inside leverage on a certain situation in a certain coverage, he's going to run one route versus another route. And I think a lot of that is lost in the aspect of us living in such a black and white results biased world,
Yeah, you can't, if you're thinking and you slow down, then you can't play at your speed. You have to be able to think and play to your time speed and process and move without having to slow down and be unsure of yourself. And so that's where the whole game speed comes in, because you can run 4.3 at the combine in shorts. I mean, you're not thinking, you're just running. But when you have to process and move at that 4.3 speed, can you do it? And that's the ultimate test of true game speed.
As much as we have both learned over the years and having the advantage of all 22 and obviously deep study into offensive and defensive coverages and concepts and all like that, still not every time do we know everything that was supposed to happen on a play. And sometimes players cause issues with that. I mean, how many times over the years have you seen big plays happen, but yet you had two people in the same area, two receivers in the same area there, that there's no way the play was designed to be that. You go back to that Mitch Lyons clip that I don't know why I'm pulling this out of my head.
That's a deep cut.
Mitch Lyons just celebrated his birthday the other day, and one of his big plays, one of his longest catches as a member of the Steelers there. I put the clip of that up on Twitter there. It's obvious that you had two players in the same spot on that play, and it makes you wonder which one of them ran the wrong route. Yeah, the outcome was great, but should it have been?
I was thinking about the I shouldn't say this, the Tyler Kroft touchdown last night that happened last year against the Bills, where it was on the corner route and Edmonds didn't close there, and was it on
right?
Edmonds?
Was that Joe Hayden for right. Not? Was it on Mark Barron, because there was pre-snap there was some pre-snap communication that took place on that play with Hayden and Mark Barron last minute there. Did one of them miss the call there? Was Hayden supposed to the way Mark Barron on that one comes forward on I think it was the Buffalo running back Singletary that's running maybe a Texas route on that play as well too, and he broke forward on that. Was he supposed to? Or was he supposed to carry Kroft out in that? Was Hayden? I still think maybe it was on Hayden in that. It's amazing how is it that plays like this burn images into your head? Because obviously it did with both of us in this situation there. I mean, I could vividly remember that play, and a lot of people want to put the blame on Edmonds on that play. On a too deep shell, but you did have the tight end running away from him in that aspect. And on a too deep coverage, there's a lot going on in that situation. Part of me wants to think that maybe that was on Hayden there.
Yeah, I ultimately in the article put it on Hayden, and also I didn't like the play call. But but to the point, it was one of those, you're still not 100% sure what happened. You're kind of doing your best guesstimation of the situation, but it just you don't know everything, even with the all 22.
Okay. Shea Cabral writes in, greetings, sirs. Thank you for all your great work and keep us what you do. 6-year listener. This site is great, yada, yada. But really, Dave, Alex, and the crew, for a Yinzer in Massachusetts, I don't know what I would do without you. That's very kind.
Thank you.
Can the Steelers have Juju and Diontae Johnson go 80-plus receptions and JW like 60, tight ends with 40 each, running backs with 80 and 90 total. A few years ago, Ben had like 6 pass catchers with 40 plus. Can they do it with this group on offense? How can that help the run game? Oh, and Dotson is coming for that left guard spot. Sorry so long. Please never stop doing what you guys do. We need you guys. Oh, please, another super podcast with all the guys before the season starts. Sorry. Stuck 30 minutes from Foxborough. Help. Okay. a lot to chew on there, but I think we know what he's asking.
Yeah, well, first I just have to – I'm laughing at myself for our last conversation. It started with the question of offensive spacing. I end up talking about Terrell Edmonds and the Bills game and defense and all that. I'm sorry for rambling. But
well, any final thoughts on the spacing aspect?
No, like I said, yeah, it is important. It's hard to give a complete answer, I guess, right now off the cuff like that. But, yeah, it's always something going to look at. And, again, pre-snap motion, can that create more spacing? And hopefully Matt Canada can bring that influence. You got to be as creative as possible. That's certainly a requirement. To the question –
real quick, one other final thought on that. I'm a huge fan of switch routes, and I don't think there. We saw a little bit more, I think, of it last year with Randy, especially deep down the field on some of these Yankees and all like that. But I sure would like to see a lot more out of that, out of bunch, and with these switch routes, happening, I think closer to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, routes that are dependent, interconnected, as opposed to being independent, I think is going to be really important and really helpful for everybody. To the question for the person in Massachusetts, I think those numbers are a little rich. I understand that it happened before, but that's with Ben throwing over 600 times, and I know game circumstance will dictate some stuff, but I'm sure the goal, and it's unlikely that Ben hits that mark again. So I think somebody like Juju can be in that 90, maybe even touching 100 catch range, maybe Diontae around 70 to 80. Washington, maybe, a little bit lower than 60. I would say maybe in that 40 to 50 range and whatever the numbers are. But I would scale back those projections a little bit just because I don't think the Steelers want to throw that much.
Here's the thing that I think could happen that he kind of highlights in this email. Ben had something like, what was that? That was with Jess. That was just was that 2018? That was
2018. Yeah, when Ben, what did he have? 654, I think, attempts. I mean, whatever the number was.
Hold on, I'll pull you the guys that had
675 in 2018. Led the league.
Let me get my bearings here of what I'm trying to pull up here. Season stats, regular, Steelers.
Well, you do that. Yeah, just for reference. Yeah, Ben had 675 attempts 2 years ago. Prior to that, he had never thrown more than 608 attempts in a season.
Maybe it's 2017 now. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I think the emailer is referencing here. In 2017, the team had 5 guys with 40 or more receptions.
How many had 80 plus?
Just 2,
80.
And that would have been Bell and AB.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And let's see, in 2018, he had 4 with more than 40 receptions, that being Juju, AB, Connor, and McDonald. Last season, he had 4, but nobody had more than 59. That obviously, not what you want to see. Here's the biggest takeaway I come away from that email with. And a question I think would be a good question. Can the Steelers have 6 players with 40 or more receptions? How's that?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think 40 plus in general, having a lot of guys with that don't hit like 110 receptions. I think that's possible. So yeah, we'll try to figure out who the 6 would be. Juju, Diontae, they're both going to do it, assuming good health.
You think Washington can have 40 or more, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would think, complete some of those deep balls that weren't even close last year. Ebron, I know you're kind of a little on the odds of that. For Ebron getting 40.
Well, let's throw Connor up in there first.
Okay, Connor.
You would think Connor, if Connor stays healthy, is there any reason to believe that he can't catch 40 passes?
No, he'll catch 40, especially with Ben. So forward another back, would Samuels touch 40?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that's a little rich. Yeah, I think if you got 40 or more out of Connor, that's your back that did it. There.
Okay. All right, so there's 4.
So could you get one other?
Well, you said 6.
Did I say 6? Okay.
Yeah. So you'd be presuming both tight ends hitting 40 in the scenario.
Yeah, and that'd be tough. I think you could get one of them to do it.
Yeah, Samuels did have 47 receptions last year. Now, granted, Connor missed a lot of time, but worth pointing out. I think 5 is obviously the safer bet here.
Okay. Well, do you think we'll be talking about 5 doing it? Hey, I guess that's the better question: is can 5 do it? Right?
Yeah, I think 5 can do it.
Okay.
Do you think 5 can do it?
I think they can, and one of the tight ends can. Yeah, I think the big question there becomes. Obviously all those guys that have to stay healthy, because if those guys miss games, I don't think you're going to get one of those other guys to be able to, to do it there. So,
but if they stay healthy, would they siphon just the receptions away from each other? Would like Ebron and Vance both catch 35 receptions instead of
that's my only concern is one of the tight ends being able to do it.
Yeah, fair point.
That becomes the biggest question mark. Now, can you have? I hate to play a little bit further off this. Could you have 6 players do 30 or more? 6 players do 30 or more receptions.
Yeah, because I think Ebron and Vance will catch at least 30.
Okay.
Because what is that a game if they stay healthy?
What's the better question of all that?
Of what are my options here?
Of the number of receivers and the number of and the threshold of catches. I mean, we're splitting hairs about hypotheticals here.
I like the question of 5 players, 40 plus catches. Will that be done?
Okay.
Because that's a little debatable.
I mean, because 5 times 40 alone would be 200 receptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, some more of those. Last year they had, I think they had 315 receptions as a team.
I don't have that number offhand.
All right. Anyway, what do you? Anything else to discuss on that question there?
No. I mean, it's always we're just talking right now. It's hard to know anything, but I think that's reasonable. I think what we laid out is reasonable.
All right. Let's see if we can get maybe one more in here. Oh, okay. Here's one from Mark. He writes in, "Hey guys, Mark from NorCal. Love the show. I sent Dave T a question about Cyrus Tuatelli, who will be a senior year tackle at Fresno State. If California doesn't allow sports, the Steelers should steal this kid in the supplemental draft." Here's what, and he goes on to write about what Dave T wrote back about him as a tackle. I got no clue who that kid is.
I've seen the name. I don't know.
I have seen the name as well too, but I know nothing about his game there. So it's hard to. I think that the preface of the question is, I think it goes back to supplemental draft, and how many of these kids maybe come out and submit for the supplemental draft, depending on maybe what happens with the landscape of the pandemic. Boy, I just, it's so hard to fathom, right? I mean, the Steelers have never participated in a supplemental draft there, so it's hard to imagine that happening anyway. And even if you did, where's the roster spot for this kid?
Yeah, what pick do you use? I mean, a 6th, something like that. It's hard to say. We'll see who declares for the supplemental draft. I understand the point. It could be very interesting to see what players make that decision. There's still some time because that doesn't happen until July, right? The supplemental draft.
Coming up here at some point during the offseason.
I mean, I don't know when the date to declare for that is, but we'll see. But kudos to Dave T for writing back. I hope you're enjoying your vacation, though, Dave T.
Yeah, he says, P.S. hoping Christian Scotland Williamson makes the 53. There was a great interview with the Steelers pastor this past week on Instagram, of all things, and there's a link in my Twitter feed. Good long interview with Christian Scotland Williamson. Not anything that really relates to big takeaways as far as newsworthy aspect, I don't think, but just a great overall interview that if you got some time, you might want to search that out.
I thought it was interesting when he talked about how he almost wasn't a rugby player. Like that was we know him as a rugby player, but that almost didn't happen. He was going to go into banking. He had interviews like Morgan Stanley, and then the rugby thing was kind of spur of the moment, and that parlayed itself into the NFL career. So that's just kind of crazy.
Right. Just top to bottom, real good. Talks a little bit about his faith in there as well too, and I thought a pretty entertaining interview.
Yeah.
35, 40 minutes.
And Teresa Varley had written about it a couple weeks ago, and I think Scotland Williams talked about it again. Both parents of his had COVID and were pretty seriously affected by that in the hospital, and they're recovered now, I believe, and doing much better, thank goodness. But yeah, so he's been through a lot lately.
Right. Let's see. Christian Perry writes in, "Hi, Dave and Alex. I've been a listener for the last 4 years. Love the pod. Keep up the great work. Looking at this roster, I think it's the best it's been overall in a long while, with one glaring weak link: the strong safety position. When you look at Edmonds' passer rating when targeted and compare it to the rest of the league, he ranks near the bottom. I would have given the draft an A++ if we would have gotten a guy like Kayvon Wallace would pick 124 and McFarland in round 6, assuming he would be there. Please tell me he isn't as bad as stats say. If so, do you expect to grab a safety free agency to serve as a backup and potentially overtake him as a starter?" We've talked quite a bit, about the Steelers and potentially adding a safety type maybe in free agency. If they do, though, Christian, I really think that player is going to be more of a free safety. I mean, obviously you want him to be as interchangeable and position flexible as possible here, but I think you're looking at a more of a free safety type, and the type quality that you're probably going to get there anyway. Probably going to be some quite more question marks than answers in there as well too. And the thing about Terrell Edmonds, look, I mean, yeah, if there is probably one starting position that's a true weak link on his defense right now, it probably would be strong safety. However, you might as well get used to seeing him on the field this season. This is a big season for him. Alex and I just talked about one play from last season where probably a lot of people were throwing their hands up about Terrell Edmonds, and that was that touchdown against the Bills there to Tyler Kroft there. However, there's good reason to believe maybe that's not entirely on Edmonds, and especially Edmonds looked back at the end of that play too. At the tail end of the all 20 of the end zone view of that, you could tell him he looks back and say, what are you guys doing, as if that wasn't on him. Is this guy a full-fledged, starting strong safety in the NFL? No, he has not proved that to the point. He's not made enough plays. This is a big year for Terrell Edmonds, but you might as well put your patient hat on, because he's going to be on the field along with it's going to be interesting to see him play another season in that defense and a full one with a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, remember, the issue, well, to the point, if they bring in a safety, I think safety is something that needs to be addressed. It's not going to be to compete for Edmonds as a starter. You're just looking for a backup, as you said, Dave, hopefully they can play both safety spots. That's what you would be doing. You're not finding someone in August to replace your starting strong safety. The issue with Edmonds is just about the playmaking, and I'll harp on that time and time again until it changes. I have the article here in February that I wrote since 1993, this is courtesy of Pro Football Reference, of safeties with at least 30 career starts, which Edmonds has, and 2 or fewer takeaways, which Edmonds unfortunately has. There's only 2 players that have done that: Terrell Edmonds and Michael Ball from 88 to 93, with 30-plus starts and 2 or fewer takeaways. So that is historically bad company to be in. It is hard to play the number of snaps he's played, and for a defense that took the football over as consistently as they did last year, and to just not be part of that party. And he's got to make big plays in this defense. That's got to be a goal of everyone, especially in the back end, and it just has not happened yet.
I don't think instinctually I think he lacks instinctually. And there's times where I just don't think he plays as fast. I don't think he understands what he sees, and I think it's processing. And yeah. I mean, if you're going to lack those kind of traits there, man, you better be putting that helmet on the football a couple of times.
Yeah. And in our charting, his passer rating when targeted was 139.6. I mean, he just struggles with the ball in the air.
Right. So, and look, I mean, we've talked about how we think Minkah needs to move around a little bit more. There's going to be some situations where Minkah probably going to end up tied to the post,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But again, with that mentioned, he's still young, still 22 or 23 years old, however old he is, and he could grow the way that Dupree could grow. So I'm not counting him out. I'm just saying these are the things he has to work on.
Right. I mean, look, this is a big season for him. I mean,
100%.
You want to talk about, we talk about Mason Rudolph and a big summer it is for him, hoping that we don't see him during the regular season on that defensive side of the ball. There's probably no one single player that is a bigger, maybe Devin Bush and expected kind of the second year growth with him, right? That kind of thing. But, you want to point out one player on defensive side of football who is a big season for, it's got to be Terrell Edmonds.
I agree, 100%.
Let's see if we can get let's see if we get one more here. This one came in Tuesday, I think after we recorded. Dave and Alex, longtime listener on YouTube and longtime Steeler fan, first time contact. So Eddie, quote, money from Delaware. Longtime listener on YouTube and longtime Steeler fan, first time contact. I just want to make a comment to all those throwing shade at Mason Rudolph as a quality backup and potential future star. Just want to point out that Mason was thrust into the starting role, and though the results were not what anyone wanted, he did show some glimpses of greatness. What everyone fails to realize that this kid has not had a dedicated quarterback coach to teach him and mentor him. Now with Pittsburgh hiring a quarterback running back coach in Matt Canada and 1 year of tough experience, I believe Mason can develop to what the Steelers thought he was. He has the tools. Do you think this will make a difference, or should the Steelers start looking for a future quarterback next year? Love your blunt, direct, honest commentary. Eddie, thanks for the question. First time. Don't stop sending these emails in. I think Alex and I have talked a little bit about Mason Rudolph here, and what a big summer this is for him. I think I have been able to see more of the positives, I think, maybe than most as far as last season goes. Look, he had a brutal, here's the thing that I can remember most about last season of Mason. The adversity that he went through in that Miami game, which he started off horrible there, to really kind of rebound in the second half and make some of the throws that he made in that game, I thought showed a lot of moxie with him. Was there a lot of bad last season? Absolutely.
It's a lot of weird last season, just the strangest year.
It was really a roller coaster kind of year with him, and really that roller coaster included a huge low dip with that roller coaster going down there because the Browns game, it makes you really wonder still, and I think you and I talked about this the other day, what would have happened in that Cleveland game had a couple of those deep balls to Johnny Holton been completed. Okay,
they could have won it. I mean, they could have won that game easily.
What changed? I mean, we don't have that BS that went on at the end of the game, the frustration, obviously, the bad interceptions later in that game that he threw. Maybe you don't have those. And I know this is a lot of ifs and all, but a couple of those deep balls probably should have been caught, and just makes you wonder how that whole complexion would have changed. And then fast forward out of that game into that game against Cincinnati, brutal first half. I mean, you couldn't help. I mean, that first throw to his at the feet of Diontae Johnson in the second half, that's what got him pulled.
That's when you knew, okay, he's just not having to stay. But I think about the Baltimore game, Earl Thomas hit. He gets, his face mask cut off on the field, the cart gate. It's just so much weird happened to him last year.
Right. And then go into bless his heart, the game against the Jets.
Yep.
What would have happened in that game had he finished it?
Right.
I know that's a lot of ifs, and it doesn't take away that the guy had issues. I mean, you go back to that crossing pattern to him missing Johnny Holton on maybe he didn't have faith in Johnny Holton.
I don't think that's
I'm spitballing here. I mean, there was a lot of bad in his tape, and we talk about him not getting that ball out on that one safety that he took. That ball's got to come out, and then you got to let the receiver either make the play or not make the play. You got to try. There was just so many different things during that season, and a lot of it. Look, I still think there was times where the kid was just pressing way too hard. thinking I got to make, I got to make. And look, there's a lot of pressure on him, as well, because you coming in you taking over for. He was never more relaxed, I don't think, than the first couple of series against Seattle when he came into the game and he wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah, well, the Jets game too. He was better coming off the bench than he was as the prepared starter.
Right. So now, what does all this mean with him? We don't know. That's why at least I don't know. That's why I think this is a hugely important summer for him this summer. And I think they're going to learn more about him than we're going to learn about him, or at least that's the hope.
Yeah, just in the way we talked about Terrell Edmunds, how big of a year it is for him, you can apply that to Rudolph. Now, obviously, hopefully Rudolph doesn't play as much as Edmunds does when the games start counting, but this is a big year. This is sink or swim for Rudolph. He's got to show it in preseason and camp and any regular season action he hopefully does not get. You can have a lot of excuses last year, a lot of context last year, but point is he's got to turn things around for this year, and that's what it comes down to.
All right, one last one here from Sean Irvine. Looks like he's a West Virginia fan, too. He goes, 2020 season game viewing. Dave and Alex, unsure of how to word this hypothetical, but do you see any adjustment being made to how games will be made available to fans this season due to the virus? With partially filled stadiums sounding the most likely as of now, even more so for partially filled sports bars and such, will the league attempt to make games more widely available for fans to view, such as, but not limited to, the below? Having this season of Sunday Ticket be available for purchase for anyone, not just DirecTV customers. Of all the things that you put on this, Sean, I have been a proponent for this for years. And don't understand. In other words, you shouldn't have to be able to live in a satellite location only to be able to buy just the NFL Sunday Ticket package. Does that make sense?
It does, but I don't like the odds of that being changed. I don't think DirecTV would be too happy with that.
I don't think so either. But if right, I don't think we're far away from DirecTV and NFL not partnering together anymore, if that makes sense.
Okay, but they're still under contract partnership for 2020, and I don't think I don't think NFL can unilaterally just change that. Right,
and I agree. I don't think that's going to happen this year. But I have been a proponent of what happens to that guy just because. Okay, I understand that if a guy can't, if people don't have the ability, say because they live in an apartment complex or something like that, I don't think it should be limited to just those kind of people being able to buy the package from DirecTV, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I'm not disagreeing.
But do we think they're going to change that this year? No. Here's number 2. Available on Game Pass at a blank subscription fee to stream live games. Yeah, that kind of goes into kind of what I'm saying with the DirecTV right now. I think you'd have to be international to have a Game Pass live subscription. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Number 3, partnering with additional networks similar to March Madness to be able to air more games at once. Once again, those networks are going to have to pony up, and that's why you have the exclusivity of the TV contracts and all like that. So I don't think that. Here's the thing about March Madness. So doesn't CBS own like those other networks? Or TBS or whatever, like the True Network. How many different networks are those things shown on during?
Yeah, TNT, TBS, True, and CBS. I think were the 4 it gets shown on. I don't know who CBS owns and doesn't own.
But let's see here. Amazon Plus NFL streaming service similar to their Thursday night viewings in the past. Sean, I don't know how to answer that and give you some hope here. It comes down to money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think the NFL is going to do anything special in terms of rules or anything. They may reduce prices, have some different deals to buy a Game Pass or whatever the case is. Maybe DirecTV would change their price. I don't think it'll be anything dramatically changed, though, in terms of access to watch games.
I think Sean was it Sean? I switched off of that.
I think it was.
Yeah, Sean. Sean. I think the best case scenario here is that you frequent the sports bar. If it might be a little bit more emptier in there.
Yeah, well, that's his concern. Is if they're only allowed half capacity, then what if you just can't get in the sports bar?
Yeah, that's a good point there as well too. I don't have a good answer to that.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we're all in wait and see mode.
I do, but I don't know if I should say it or not. But get you a VPN service and learn how to use that in the international and the international game stream version. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay.
Go. So we'll see. I mean, NFL is still proceeding like normal right now. We'll see what actually happens, and we'll cross all those bridges whenever we come to it.
All right, we are at. I think we managed to fill up an hour and 45 minutes today. How's that?
Hey, we're pretty good at this thing.
All right, what else we got coming, and what are we going to be talking about on Tuesday?
Oh man, I have no idea. Let's see. You have your series. I have my series. I'm doing the top 10 effort hustle plays in Steelers history. We'll continue on that over the weekend, and
Tom's got another interesting post coming this weekend, right?
Yeah, had a really cool series. Got a lot of warm reception. The first one, his keep, cut series. The first one was on quarterbacks. Who would you keep? Who would you cut? You got to keep 2, cut 1 of Mason, Duck, and Paxton Lynch. He'll have one on the defensive line for Saturday, so tomorrow. So that'll be a good discussion. Curious to get your guys' thoughts on that.
All right. Please visit SteelersDepot.com. Thank you if you do. Also, thank you for listening to the podcast as well, too. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, I think we just got a flat-out donation yesterday or 2 days ago. Go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. That'll take you to PayPal where you can donate securely. Thank you for everybody that has, and continue to do so. We certainly do appreciate that. Also, it remains very, very popular. Our ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com for $25 for 1 calendar year. You can have an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. You get that by going to SteelersDepot.com, hitting the ad-free button, upper right navigational bar. Follow all the directions. Create yourself a username and a password. That's part of it. That's what gets you access to the ad-free version as well too. And we appreciate everybody that subscribes that way. So in the meantime, until Tuesday, Alex, I appreciate it. You have a great weekend, guy. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.